We are going to be talking about a post that we saw. I think I jumped into a parallel universe.
All right.
Dun dun dun. Welcome to Deep Speak, where we ask the questions to the answers of the universe. Follow our crazy trains of thought as we start on one topic and end up
In a whole other dimension.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome back.
Top of the morning to ya.
It's not St. Patty's Day yet.
Not yet.
So today we are going to be talking about a post that we saw on my Facebook, and it was from a Facebook friend of mine named Alicia, and she posted, I think I jumped into a parallel universe.
All right.
Dun dun dun. So we're going to talk about some of the people's responses to that, and then we will talk about our experiences too, and probably get off track a billion times.
Yes.
And hopefully circle back like Jen Psaki in the end.
Yeah.
Well, like she never does, though, actually.
Yeah, we're just going to lie about it.
We're going to promise it.
I know what I want to say right away.
Go for it.
And there's a lot of different topics to this, but as an introduction, I feel like just maybe even less than 5 years ago, this term was coming to light more, especially with CERN, that's in Switzerland, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, and you don't have to be, you kind of have to be a science geek to know about it, but it's started to become mainstream, especially in a lot of comic movies and stuff like that, which helped make it more mainstream. And then the real boom seemed to happen 2 years ago in 2020, because our world and our reality has dramatically changed very suddenly. And I don't feel like our personal lives are any different. And so I'm curious, about other people's experience, because for us...
Yes, comment below.
Yeah, please. It was the beginning of March of 2020. And I don't want to get too much in details, but ironically, we went through the Bermuda Triangle.
No, like I don't think people realize we literally went through. Me and Josh.
Yeah,
we went through.
And on the ship,
we went on a cruise.
We went on a cruise, and on the ship, things started to get weird when we had no idea what was going on. Now, I had first heard of whatever COVID was in China in the beginning of January of 2020.
I started seeing memes where people were putting masks on the Corona beer in the ice box in the store, and I was like, "What is going on?" Apparently, they were calling it Corona then; they didn't call it COVID.
Exactly. Yeah, I forgot about that. Mm. So on my end, working at a paint body shop supply shop store, everyone kept calling, where are our masks and the N95 ones, and
the PPE for like painters, and stuff like that.
Particulates and stuff. Yeah. And all I knew was that there was, people allegedly sick in China, and they were hoarding them all basically. And it was a really weird scenario. And we looked into it like, oh yeah, 3M is literally sending all their masks to China and we don't have any. So I thought that was kind of weird.
I didn't know that. I thought there was just a shortage.
No, there was no shortage.
I didn't realize they actually were sending them to China.
3M was sending them to China.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So anyway, there wasn't much other than that. Just some work stuff, And
it's
then,
because I was so focused on creating my online course at that point that I was like, that's all I did. Yeah. Day, night, 24 hours a day for like 3 months, basically, for January, February, March. Well, January and February. But I remember when I told my mom I was going on a cruise, and she was like, hopefully it's not in China. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, I didn't even know that there was there was first like a cruise ship thing, right? In China?
I think it was starting to make the news like in the end of February or something.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. I don't know. So anyway, we went on the cruise, and didn't they take our temperature right away getting on?
Yes, we were like, why are they taking it?
Why are they doing that?
We were like,
so naive,
Right. As we were boarding the cruise ship.
Mm-hmm.
It just they had a little temperature thing on your forehead, and I'm like, this is strange.
Yeah.
So if I'm hot, because it's hot here in Florida, I'm like, then I'm gonna what's gonna happen? But anyways.
Yeah. So anyway, and then they took everyone once we were out already. They grouped everyone together to do like a head count or something, which was they packed us all in, and
that's normal.
Okay.
That's a cruise ship thing that wasn't a head count. That was it was a training to so you knew if something happened to the boat. But we were jam packed. It was claustrophobic nightmare. I thought I was gonna fucking freak out.
I hated that right away. So anyway, I don't.
No one ever tells you that about cruise.
I know, right? Never hear about that. So and that lasted a while, So finally, it was like when we were done with that, like, oh, good, now we can get on with our vacation, And so it's strange because they had everyone packed together, and yet we went to get ice cream. And I think that was the first thing we noticed. And we were like, where's the handle?
I was like, how do you make this ice cream machine work? And I was like trying to push buttons and touching the metal in different areas.
We were both doing
Is this high tech, low tech? Well, I don't understand how to get this ice cream to work.
And then all of a sudden, and I don't know if we finally found out that we couldn't have it.
We came back to our room, and there was a letter in our room that said that they were shutting down the soft serve machines and the buffet.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's all we have. What do you mean shutting down all these? This is part of the package.
Right. And this all happened while we were there, because then all of a sudden there were sanitizing stations all over the place too.
Yep.
And that wasn't there when we first got on the ship. So it was like, I don't know. It was mass hysteria.
And I brought a bunch of antibacterial wipes before this whole mess, because someone had said, when you go on the cruise, make sure you bring it, because you might have to wipe down your room. And I did. Our room was gross. It was not clean.
So the trip had a weird vibe, and I just want to bring up what you said to me that Saturday night, that basically
we were standing
on the balcony looking at
Nassau,
the island of Nassau, at the port, and you hear the city sounds, and it was really cool. But you said something's changing, and it was a bad feeling, and
I was just an overwhelming. It's hard to describe, because it wasn't like an emotion. It was a feeling of sadness, despair. It was really bad. I remember I described it to you. I was trying to describe it, because I can't describe vibration very well. We don't have the right words to describe vibrational feelings accurately, I don't think. Remember I said to you that it felt like as if we broke up. Mm-hmm. Remember I said that? Because it was the only way I could describe how horrible that feeling was. Mm-hmm. Imagine what that would be like, and then that's what it felt like. And you freaked out.
Yeah. There was a weird vibe, but I don't think I was picking up that level that you were. And so when you said break up, I think it personally maybe triggered me. I'm not breaking up with you, and the hell we're breaking up.
Right. Exactly. That's why you were like, wait a minute.
I think you explained no, that's just what it feels like. That's not what is happening or something.
Right. I was trying to explain that.
Tried to explain that.
Yeah. And it wasn't like I was thinking about the Corona, or I wasn't thinking about the wiping down of things and the shutting down of stuff. I wasn't thinking about any of those things and then made a connection. It was just a feeling that washed over me.
Yeah. So moving on, we get back, and that was I felt this sad sense of sadness when we were leaving, actually heading back to Florida.
Well, yeah, that was the other thing, because when we were on the cruise, we had no access to outside information at all. Yep. We didn't have cell phone service. We didn't have Wi-Fi. We were completely shut off from the world. So we didn't. All we knew was this little letter said no ice cream machine.
Yeah. Yeah, and that added to the strangeness, the isolation, and the moon was full, I remember, and it was beautiful, but the
It was
waves were
eerie.
rough, and it was eerie,
Yeah.
going through the fucking Bermuda Triangle.
Yeah.
And we get back and shit's just fucking weird. We came
Soon
back
as we
into a different
came off the
world. Yep.
cruise, we got
People
onto the
were
bus
very
and
uptight. Were people wearing masks already? I don't remember
I don't
because
think
Florida didn't
so,
experience
but
that as
as soon as
much.
I
But
got like cell phone service and like went on my Facebook or social media, I was like, holy shit, Josh, people are going crazy
yeah,
right
yeah.
now. And that was what, the beginning of March,
Beginning of
right?
March, I think the 6th we got back. It was like a 3-day trip. So moving forward, then we had what's called land sickness, which was very strange too. Sometimes I wonder if that was an ascension symptom, and I hate using that term, or
Or like even
or
shifting timelines or
yeah,
something. Yeah.
because the feeling is just disgusting. I don't even like thinking about it,
It
but
was, we were extremely dizzy.
yeah,
And the funny thing was on the boat was like that too, was this very lightheadedness, just lightheaded, like you felt like you weren't there almost. It was very, whoa, like
yep,
dizzy, like you were
yeah.
about to pass out, but almost like not even physical. It almost felt like it was like you were high or
It
something,
was the
or
weirdest
buzzed or
feeling. Yeah,
something.
I did not enjoy it, but it was very strange.
And that lasted. Yeah, and that was the other thing. We stayed in the middle of the boat. We were in the right
Yeah,
room to avoid any of that sickness.
seasickness, right,
And yet we had it so bad.
right.
And then for like weeks
Yeah, it
afterwards,
was a
we
few weeks.
just constant dizziness, hard to
Yep.
just stand up even.
Yeah, I would be sitting at a desk at work and feel like I just jumped 50 feet, like fell 50 feet, like that pit you get going downhill really fast. It was that just sitting still. I hate that feeling. And it was so strange. And we looked it up and it's pretty rare. And it was called land sickness, basically. But so anyway, moving forward, and then after that, then my dad passed away, and yes, he was sick for a while, but that was kind of weird.
Right, because that was when things were still locked. That was right away.
Right
That was like the
away,
next week, and things were locking down. We went into the hospital to
they had
see
police
him. And
officers.
when we first came in, we had to tell them, hey, like it's end of life,
Yeah,
an end of life visit, because they weren't letting any visitors in.
yeah, they literally were like chasing us down, like, "Hey, you!" Like
Yeah,
they
then,
would stand in
well,
front of you,
then, like
like,
in
"Holy
later on that
crap!"
afternoon, they had the cops
Yeah, yeah, they had
actually
cops
at
guarding
the
the doors. It
hospital
was
guarding the
crazy,
doors.
and I was mad because I'm like, "This is emotionally messed up enough." I'm dealing with my dying parent, and yet you're protecting us from a virus. So I was angry right away. Like, what are you gonna do?
Yeah,
Why do you need cops to protect from a virus? Like, what? This is
yeah.
weird.
Well, it was sad because there were lots of people who died
Yeah,
alone, who were going through major, in the ICU,
yeah.
major situations where they couldn't have people with while they were sick, including what ended up happening to me.
Yeah, so moving on, then the lockdowns came, and I was an essential worker, and that's a whole different subject, but shit was chaotic with my work situation, and everyone was inside, so there was this weird sense of the isolation I think that a lot of people experienced,
Hmm.
with lockdowns. And also, you started noticing that you were not feeling right.
First I transitioned pretty easily from my regular practice. I think I had a few sessions after I came back from the cruise, in my office, but then I was like, okay, well, everybody's locking down and everybody's freaking out, especially in Dane County, because they're all crazy people there. And so I was like, all right, I'll just do Zoom calls. And I had already figured out how to do that pretty effectively. So I started doing some Zoom calls with clients. So I transitioned pretty easily
Yeah.
from the office to the home. And then as I was recording all of these for my online courses, all these videos, I remember you would get home and I'd be like, God, there's just something not right with my stomach. Like I felt like it just didn't feel right, No other symptoms, right? Everything else was fine, and I just had this pain in my in my stomach. So I thought it was, some sort of digestive issue, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't really going away. It was like constant pain. It was on my lower left side. So I thought, was it, a cyst that I normally got cysts down there on my ovary on that same side. So I thought maybe it's a cyst. It's going to burst, or I've had that happen, which is really painful. But anyways.
So yeah. We're, with the reinforcement of everybody stay inside, we're like, well,
stay home, save lives.
I think they were inflating the numbers. My mom had just been laid off from the hospital, so that was a debate between me and
they've shown that now. Project Veritas actually is showing that they were purposely inflated.
Yeah, so I remember getting into, little, I wouldn't even call them debates, because people just said they were right, and right away, people like, well, she probably got laid off because it's not safe to be there. And I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. You need more hospital staff. Like,
who are you talking about?
Just people on social media.
Oh, yeah.
So it immediately became this controversial thing that suddenly everybody was an expert, and so I got off of social media altogether. I'm sorry, I didn't yet. But I did delete most of my friend list.
Yeah, I deleted a lot of people too, because I was like, y'all batshit crazy.
And then I don't want to drag it out too much, but everything just kept getting weirder. And then by June, I think they temporarily suspended the mandate, because they kept extending it, which is still going on, by the way, 2 years later in Dane County, Wisconsin. Right? Ugh. And so they had temporarily ended it. Then came riots and all this and that in the world. And I'm like, okay, so we were going to go to Chicago. Originally, I was going to propose. And we ended up going down to St. Louis. And we did that and got back. And it was 3 days later where we finally got you in. And then we found out that you had aggressive stage 4 cancer.
Yeah. Well, because I didn't have any other symptoms until the end of May.
Yeah.
Where my stomach blew up. And then I really thought it was digestive system. Mm-hmm. I did not think it could have been cancer by any means whatsoever. No, I never would have thought that. But either. I called the doctor to get in, got a doctor's appointment for the end of June.
Yeah, they were like, we can't get you in for another month.
Because, it wasn't like I didn't have a fever and I wasn't bleeding from my eyeballs. Yeah. So it wasn't an emergency. So then when we came back from St. Louis, my stomach was distended quite a bit. I was in a lot of pain, and I have a freaking high pain tolerance, and that's part of the problem why I should have went to the ER and just said and demanded to be seen instead of being like, okay, I'll just wait. Yeah. But by the time we got back, you were like, you need to get in. You need to call the doctor and make sure you get in.
Yep.
And then when I came in, and immediately it was like, oh my God, go to the emergency room after they took my blood test. That was freaky. They rushed me to the emergency room, and then they did the CT scans, and they were like, oh, yeah, well, you have a aggressive stage 4 cancer that just grew since March, basically, into this gigantic mass and is spread into your lungs. So you're going to die in 4 months. Glad you stayed home to save lives.
No, I had just proposed to her that same week, so...
Yeah, that was sad. That put a...
I don't know.
Put a damper on a beautiful occasion.
And I don't want to keep going with how that year went, but it just was like, are you kidding me? Like, who does that happen to? Like, what a weird story. It felt so. What I'm getting at is that it felt like we crossed over into a parallel dimension called hell.
Crazy, backwards, bizarro world.
Everything became backwards way more than it ever was in my life experience. Like, people just have lost their mind. Like,
the good-hearted, loving people turned into these vicious mask holes that just wanted to control everyone. Yeah. It was like the nicest people turned into the meanest people. Yeah. It was the weirdest thing.
It is so strange. Yeah.
But then at the same time, I had the biggest outpouring of love and support and compassion that I've ever seen towards anyone, and definitely have never experienced.
Yeah.
People were sending like help in any way that they possibly could to me, and it was like a beautiful blessing to like my heart. Like I was seeing the best of people and the worst of people at the exact same time. It was very, very surreal.
Yeah, surreal. The whole time, from my angle, it felt like this isn't reality. Like there's no way this can be a reality. The timing, like how do you go from I never felt like I don't know what normal life is, but I always thought that me personally, I didn't have a normal life. I didn't have the weirdest life or anything, but I didn't think I had some weird stuff happen in my life. All that fell away at 2 years ago. Like that, it's been nothing but living in a weird sci-fi movie since
That's what
then.
It feels like, an X-Files episode that drags on.
Yeah. We literally have all the villains too.
We do.
The small
Smoky
group of
Man.
People, meeting in some
World Economic Forum.
hidden room, talking about what they want to do, and cancer even, and the cure for cancer, and an alien virus, and blah 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 blah. Like it's like that's
and they want to depopulate the world.
Okay, so
it's so weird how it all seems like a sci-fi movie. Doesn't seem like reality.
Prior to that, though, with like my writings and research, I was also getting more into parallel worlds, coming back full circle again.
Your books have always been.
Yeah, my books have always been. Yeah.
A shameless plug of Split Dreams.
Split Dreams.
He's Josh has got an amazing book series. We only have two published so far out of like 10. So.
Right. So,
but that whole series, Split Dreams, is very similar to the weirdness of this reality that we were experiencing.
Yes. So, and I saw that right away when I started writing the iteration. I'm talking about, people don't know, but it started in the 90s as a comic book, and then I brought it back into a newer, series in 2015. So I started noticing weird coincidences right away, but the biggest one yet has been the ninth book.
This is my favorite book.
Right. Really good, if I don't say so myself. But I just did. And it ended, I stopped writing it in early December of 19. And it ended with a shadow coming in, basically, and some sort of virus coming through.
That was the eerie part.
Yeah.
And it was like a dark virus.
It was a dark virus, and it was basically not just a biological virus, but some kind of electrical virus of information or misinformation, basically. And so what popped out of nowhere at the end of 19?
Right.
The big bad corona.
That's why I said, can you please write us a new story, Josh? Because your stories are coming to life, Simon.
No, ever since then, I've been a little bit traumatized, because I'm almost more trying to be more, I don't know what the word is. Like, I'm writing after the fact now, because I just reflect on what's current, because I'm afraid if I create something, I'm actually going to create something bad.
Right.
And that was never meant to be that way. Honestly, when I finished that book, I'm like, I have no idea where I go from here, because this is some pretty like interesting, not dark, but like it was a heavy storyline.
Oh yeah, 9D that's a really good. I almost want to skip typing all of the other ones, because that. Josh hand writes them all, and so I have to type them all. I have to retype them all, and then we're also creating audiobook and ebooks from it too.
So I wasn't trying to shamelessly plug, but
you can always shamelessly plug.
It is part of our discussion, though, because everything that has followed after I wrote that has mimicked all of the books, but especially that one in many, many ways specifically. And prior to Corona, I was wondering if I was already wondering, like, how much of this reality do we create, right? And do we truly shift timelines by focusing on certain energies or certain ideas? This was already in a, something me and you were both playing with. And let's create a good reality, blah blah blah.
Yeah, and I had been studying for a long time the My Big Toe with Thomas Campbell, which is my big toe standing for the theory of everything. And that is his perspective on it is very interesting. He was a quantum physicist who learned to meditate, who then realized that there's a lot of other things that come from meditation, including being able to understand how the world works and blah blah blah. And he developed this theory of everything. How do you have a theory of everything? Well, basically it boils down to its simulation. And so his theory is that everything is a simulation. We have this thing called the larger consciousness system, which we could equate to being a form of God, source energy, and then you have these individual units. So that's between, and then us, our bodies, our avatars. So you have a larger consciousness system, individual units of consciousness, I think it is, and then your avatar. And so that individual unit is basically our higher self, or the
basically a game,
or the game player,
the game.
Right? Higher self, our, what else do you call that? Inner being, yeah, soul, maybe soulmate. The one thing that connects us between God and us is that part in between. So, anyways, that's an interesting theory. Should I read the other? Is there more you wanted to say about?
No, I actually want to engage the question or the comments.
Yeah. So there are some really interesting comments underneath Alicia's post that I thought were fascinating. And I was like, I need to be friends with all these people because they share that mindset of like wanting to think deeper, right? And kind of like bring everything together, God and science, and which I don't think are separate. I think they are the same thing, right? I think there's explanations that kind of cross over, and there's just different wording or language for them all, right? Like you call source energy, or what people call the universe is God, right? Or it's the same thing in my mind. So the first comment underneath hers was from Jennifer and said, just ask God to get you back out and be patient. So if you recall, the post was saying, I think I jumped into a parallel universe. So Jennifer is basically, I think, kind of saying that, all right, well, if you jumped, then you want to probably ask God to have help to get back. So she's assuming that she jumped into something bad.
Right.
Right.
Making that assumption.
Right. Yeah. And that it wasn't intentional and that God can save you from it. It's an interesting perspective.
It is.
Do you want me to go on? Because there's another. Want me to find the other one that talks about God too? So somebody else said, let's see. So then Brenton said, nope, you just woke up to the reality that you are in what the Bible calls and predicts the last days of this age. Which is so interesting too. Yeah. He's like, okay, well, you didn't jump realities or lifetimes, or you're not in a different universe. You're just in this, the Book of Revelations kind of time frame, which your mom has been saying forever.
She has been, and until 2020 I dismissed it because
right, we were like, come on.
I also, for one, I don't like it. It's very pessimistic and negative, but it also doesn't, and still doesn't, completely seem realistic, or didn't seem realistic to me, because I try to see things on a broader perspective, and the reality that I see is that things have always been messed up in our world. We've gone through some really ridiculous, crazy stuff as a human race, and that is factual. And I think it's all perspective too, because a lot of, tribes and whatever, all through history, pick something, real history. You can pick something that they probably thought this is the end of the world, but it was really just the end of their world, or the end of Epoch, thank you. I was trying to think of my word. Right?
Yeah.
The fall of Rome or whatever, like that was the end of the world for them.
Right.
But life went on, like it just was the end of their empire kind of thing. So, but the last 2 years have been like, is the world ending? Like,
because
what
there
is
is some, I mean, and it's hard because no, we didn't live 2,000 years ago. We didn't live 100 years ago. So we can't see from the perspective what would literally be a different experience then as it is now, or from what is going on now. So I think that we don't have a real life examples that we have lived through that we can say that was then and this is now and this is what's different about it. We don't have a real comparison. We have books, we have what people told us. We have not lived that experience, so we don't know. But what does seem different, which I don't think has ever happened, is I think that people are getting this, what people are calling the red pill. And I think people describe that probably differently. Some people think it's like waking up to conservatism or something like that. But no, it's not a political thing. It's the red pill. I think that was the Matrix, right?
Matrix reference, yeah.
Yeah. So people are waking up and saying, oh my goodness, wait a minute. Like, I feel like I've always kind of known, like you had like this like song in the back of your head that kind of told you that was like playing, but you didn't really pay attention to it, or a sound. If like there's like a sound that's like outside and you don't realize it until it stops. And you're like, oh, what was that sound? Like it was just a constant humming that I never even realized was there. I feel like that's what I've had my whole life. And like when 9/11 happened, things just seemed odd. Like none of that made sense. And I was tried to make sense of it, but I was young mom raising kids. I couldn't really look into it. We didn't have the internet to kind of like, right, or at least it wasn't relevant.
We did. It just, we were still dial up.
Right. And, it was 2001. Yeah, we were really in the beginning of that. So we didn't have social media. We had maybe like chat rooms or something like that, Yahoo right?
Chat or whatever it was.
But I knew something was wrong, but I didn't know what it was. And I've heard these like conspiracies over the years, and I would think, and I was like, oh, really? Like, is that? And then I kept thinking, if that was true, oh God, I want to slap myself for thinking this, because I think that now, if that was true, then we would have heard about it on the news, or the government would have told us. Like somebody, like I had this weird. This trust in our government, in like the people who are, smarter and older and wiser and understand the economy and the government and politics. They understand those things. I don't. I'm just lowly little me. They are watching. I had this false belief in this, like someone watching over us, these humans watching over us and taking care of us and making sure things were okay. And then when all of this happened, it was like, holy crap. No, we have a ton of people watching over us, controlling us. Not just trying to control us, but they've been controlling us. And I feel like that's like the black pill that they call, where I'm like, oh my gosh, there's pedophilia and there's this island and they steal kids and they steal people and they hurt them and they do heinous crimes and that's not, and I was like, it's not even a conspiracy anymore.
Yeah.
It's not a theory. It is a conspiracy. It's not a theory anymore. And then you realize 9/11 was all set up. And then I'm like looking into that more, and then the JFK thing, and I'm like, what? And then you go, and then I was like, and then somebody said something like, it was probably on Alicia's page because she posts so many posts that I like, actually, I think I like every single one of her posts, but someone said something like, no, this has been going on for thousands of years. And I was like, what? And then you said, yes, since the Roman Empire. And I was like, what? They've been, because we looked into, Bernays and propaganda and the beginning of that word and how they used it for media, and how they used advertising to manipulate us to buy things. But it goes so much deeper than that. It's almost like they've been keeping us in this sleep in order to control us. And then people started to wake up, and then they had to create a bigger and bigger narrative or emotional response in us to try to get us to either go back to sleep or to stay in compliance.
Right. It was because even less than 100 years ago, it was definitely not harmless, but it was things, appealing to our psychological desires, like smoking, that was promoted as a social hierarchy. You were of class if you smoked, and then the psychological end with Bernays and his crazy uncle Freud.
Yeah, we'll mention it again. It's from you can see it on YouTube, the whole series. It's called The Century of Self.
Yeah.
Century with a C. Mm-hmm. It's a really good series. You should watch it.
Yeah. So it was mainly controlling masses by means of appealing to their psychological needs and desires.
Emotional.
Right? And emotional, yeah.
They're emotional
Mostly
disease.
Emotional.
Yeah, women want to feel empowered. You want to be like a man? Well, smoke a cigarette.
Right.
That's how they literally got into the women market.
Yep.
To sell them cigarettes was that. But it goes so far beyond that. That's just a tool.
Yeah, that's just a tool.
Right? Advertising, capitalism, that sort of stuff. That's all a tool, not capitalism itself, but it's all to get you to be a consumer of their products so they can get richer, which means that they have more power.
Right.
Then they manipulated you into this. This has been a gigantic manipulation of humanity throughout the years, and we could go back to, and I don't know if we want to go down this path, but you also taught me about the Book of Enoch. And when I first learned about the Book of Enoch, I went, holy crap.
Right.
This is a book that was literally taken out of the Bible. Mm-hmm. They did not put it in there because it's about aliens owning us as a slave race. Mm-hmm. And we don't have, they took it out. They're like, well, maybe we'll just leave that out of the Bible because why? Because then they'll know? Like, what? I don't know. It's so crazy.
It is.
And when I talk to religious people, like I always want to say, hey, I know you're really, really like biblically into it, but do you know about the Book of Enoch? And I think some people will just dismiss it. My mom, no clue. I studied the Bible front and back in the day. Never heard of Enoch.
It's really weird, and especially when you get into like the Watchers, like some people think they were the early like iterations of angels that is basically like entities that were watching us from above.
In a good way or in a way to keep us enslaved?
I don't know. You tell me. But then just not that long ago, remember somebody deployed satellites, and I think they were calling them the Watchers or something.
Oh, really?
You probably don't remember because I think it happened in 2020 when too much other things were going crazy. But we were like, really?
Oh.
You're naming it that? That's weird. I'll have to look into that again. But either way, I don't know. It's...
Well, and I mean, the book even talks about Nephilim.
Yep.
Which was these angels that slept with humans.
Yep.
And they created us as a slave race to mine gold. I think that's what the Book of Enoch talks.
That's the story.
The essence of it is to mine gold because gold helped their spaceships or something.
Well, I mean, that's
I know it sounds crazy.
I don't know if that's actually in the book.
I'd have to read the book. I haven't read the book itself. I think I've only just read about the book. So if anyone has read the Book of Enoch and understands it and has a relevant understanding of it, I would love to see somebody talk about that.
So even as crazy as it sounds, the thing is it really shouldn't sound crazy anymore with the current universe we're living in, because things have become so strange that one of the good outcomes of everything being so weird is that I think a lot more people have become more open-minded, that a lot of these things that are usually dismissed are actually possibly true, no matter what the subject actually possibly true. And it's opened up people's minds a little more. Like, I think there's not just one history. There's a lot of different stories that we've never heard of, including a book being omitted, from the one of many reiterations of the Bible, we're talking thousands of years, And yes, things get lost in history because our language changes, right? Every country has different languages, but when you have things written in stone, and if you can decipher that language, that's a really good way of relaying information, written in stone.
Yeah.
Because paper can be burned. And
right.
There's just so much, I think, about our entire history as a species that we have no idea.
I think it's such a fascinating topic to think about. And I usually take things in as like a possibility first and then move them into probability. And I do a lot of contemplation and I need a lot of evidence before I move it into a fact, right? But I that's why we consider ourselves open-minded skeptics, which is also what Tom Campbell calls himself, because we're open-minded about everything. We want to consider all possibilities, right? We want the broad spectrum of it, but then we want to narrow it down and be skeptical to not believe all of them, but we want to then have evidence-based facts to kind of help move us into to narrow down, right? Like flat earth, I don't fall for the flat earth thing, although I could see that maybe we are in a simulation, and so then it's not really flat, it's just zeros and ones, I believe that more than I believe that you could eventually walk off of the planet, or that you can't go all the way around, and I can't fall for that one.
Me either.
That one, and I'm sorry, flat earthers, but you have a right to believe whatever you want, and if that works for you, it works for you. But I haven't been able to get enough to move down that path. But I think the idea of this slave race thing is really interesting because, again, I would really want to read the Book of Enoch. Maybe we could do a whole special on that. I don't know. But think about what we're doing right now with AI, right? Yeah. We've created this race, basically, this system of, tell me to help us do what we need to do in the world, to tell us where we're going and what time to be there and what's going on and how to make a casserole, like all these sort of things. And now robotics is integrating the AI right into these actual mechanical robotics, where they're being chefs and they're creating things. They've gotten the fingers down right. They've been able to learn how to sync them together into a singularity net, like a collective consciousness type thing. So think about what happens though after, because our biggest fear then is that, and even Elon Musk says this, that eventually AI is going to become, we're going to create something to help us so much that then it's going to have its own life, a life of its own. Because it'll be able to reproduce, which is what I think the Book of Enoch shows too, is that it wanted us to reproduce, because then we would be able to
self-replicating self. Yep.
Exactly. We'd be able to create more of what you're doing, so then you can have more helping. And actually, that was basically the part of that Doctor Who episode that we just watched the other night, where they went to that other planet and
the suits.
Yeah, they create. Right. That was exactly what that was. Not the suits. No, it was the one where they were those micro nanobots that they had that were so the whole Earth traveled to another planet because their Earth was demolished, right? And they traveled and they were in a sleeping chamber, remember, in the ship, and then before they would wake up, they had these bots go out into this new planet and plant wheat and build with a skeleton crew.
Okay. Yep.
Remember, I think it was called like skeleton or something. Skeleton crew of people who were helping the bots working together.
That's right.
To create this new, when they all woke up from their sleeping chambers, that they could then walk into a built world. But these bots became a colony of their own, and then the humans and the bots had to learn how to get along together. I love Doctor Who. I cannot find any of the Doctor Who fans, but I swear to God, I love that show so much. But that's kind of what it is. Like we do need to fear something like that happening in our world.
I personally think we've done this before, maybe in different ways, but whether or not it's in the Book of Enoch, there's been other theories that going along with the slave human race thing, that we were created genetically here, and placed here to mine, apparently, and be self-replicating. And some people think that the Great Flood that's referenced in a lot of religions around the world.
Yep, a lot of doctrine.
That was to rid, of the early human race. We're no longer needed or got out of control. I think that's in the Bible, isn't it? That like humans started getting out of control, basically,
and that's why God
sinning,
flooded
and that's,
the earth. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So some people link that to the whole alien story, but either way, it's interesting because it's really, again, it's not that far-fetched. It's just that our mind can't wrap around something that we cannot relate to anymore because it would have been thousands and thousands of years ago. Like, we can't even imagine living the way we lived even a few hundred years ago.
Right, exactly.
So we definitely, we scoff at ideas of how humans lived even thousands of years ago because we can't picture it,
Yeah.
But we have geological structures and evidence that show we had some sophistication. Whether or not aliens built the pyramids in Egypt, like either way, they're amazing structures that took really smart engineers to create thousands of years ago. There's so much that we have forgotten, lost, has been hidden from us about our history. And so I don't think it's that ridiculous, especially as we're coming full circle to creating another race ourselves. We're doing that right now.
Right.
So why is that so unusual to think that we could have originated the same way?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I wonder why they would have built emotions in unless it was, like wouldn't it have been better to just be Cybermen and not have emotions and just follow rules? And you know what I mean? Like why emotions then?
I don't know. I don't think that emotions maybe were originally part of the design, if that's how we originated.
Or maybe it was, because we have these instinctual desire to stay alive.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that was part of it. How do you keep a, like if you ended up killing each other or killing yourselves, you needed to instill maybe a fear of death, which is everyone's biggest fear. Mm-hmm. We need to instill that into us humans in order for us to not like fall off a cliff or do something stupid.
Right. There are a lot of things that are built within us to keep us alive long enough. We
must reproduce.
Reproduce.
That drive to reproduce, the drive to stay alive, the drive to, what else is there? Like,
eat.
Well, yeah, that's stay alive.
Right.
That constitutes stay alive. But maybe power, greed, status, fame.
See, where do those things
what
come
are those
in?
coming? Yeah.
Right.
I wonder.
I don't know.
I'd love to hear other people's opinions on that. Comment below.
Do we have other comments to read in there?
Oh, yeah. Okay. So we went off on the biblical part of it. So there was also then, let's see. So somebody said Lee said it's all interdimensional, not interstellar.
I like that one because I agree with that. I actually I've been saying it for years that I'm not saying space doesn't exist, but I actually think that it's only maybe our perspective that it exists. I feel like there's more interdimensional things or interdimensional realities than there are extraterrestrial.
Yeah.
I'm not saying planets don't exist. But that's the best way I can describe it. I feel like there's more interdimensional mathematical ways we can figure out that how things fold together, like the tetrahedron and the torus. Like there's all these like interesting dimensional shapes that prove that you can overlap without even touching itself. Like I don't see why reality couldn't be any different, or our reality or perception of it could be any different
Yeah.
I actually think that's maybe what we do in the parallel universe is I don't think we just switch over to one. I think we constantly are changing them based on.
Well, that's what my comment was underneath.
Yeah.
I'll read that real quick. So I said, "Oh, I love this topic and everyone's answers in the multiple worlds theory. That's what it's called, right? MWT,
MWI, whatever.
Oh, what is I? Oh, interpretation. I always get that wrong. It shows that it is likely that there are infinite possibilities, and every possibility branches off into a whole new world. This is how the law of attraction can work, not by changing matter, but by switching or turning into a life, reality, or world that's vibrationally aligned. We actually may be switching worlds constantly on a microsecond level." Yeah, which is what, when I was really high that one day on that Delta 8, I was like, oh, I feel like I can see everything's like switch. Like every second, there's like you're like switching into a new reality, vibrationally aligning with a new reality over and over and over and over. Like, remember I kept saying that? I was like, it's like.
Yeah, I should have gave you a piece of paper because you were trying to.
I was drawing it out, like the strings. I was drawing all these strings and stuff.
But I think you're right on what you were describing. I think the easier version for people to understand is that it's choices that determine it, right? Like a Reader's Choice book.
Yeah, decisions that we make, but
I don't think that's just it, though.
Trillions of decisions,
right?
Every
we're constantly.
Second. What?
Oh, my head just.
What?
That was weird. I'm not making it up.
Like, that was theatrical. What happened?
I felt like dizzy, but not like sick. Like my whole head went back, like turned around. Like I was really lightheaded. Literally, like I felt like it went whoa. Like something pushed my.
Well, that's never happened before.
That was crazy.
I've never seen you react like that before. That's really.
I'm still having a little bit of after effect from it.
Yeah, let's take a moment.
Lightheaded.
Take a deep breath.
Well, that's interesting timing.
Was that something stopping you from telling the truth, or was it something confirming that you should keep telling the truth? Well, I definitely forgot what I was
talking about.
Wow. Okay.
When we were talking about making decisions, right?
Yeah. Because I said you make a decision every second, every moment.
And I think what I say right before that happened, I said, I think there's more to it than that. Okay, so it's hard to put my finger on it, but I don't think it's just decisions. I think it's subconscious. I think there's subconscious decisions, but there's so many more factors into what determines what reality we're in.
From inside or from outside? From other people, from ourselves, from God, or all of the above? I don't
know. I think it's all of it, to be honest with you. Yeah. And I'll try to break it down into categories. The inner self, I feel like, is energetic because we know that our thoughts and our nervous system is electrical impulses.
This is true.
Our heartbeat is an electrical impulse. Correct. Which is so strange to think that a muscle just starts moving when you're conceived.
Right?
And then your whole life
it like 8 weeks or something.
Yeah. Based on an electrical spark, basically.
Like you're the size of a tip of your finger. Yeah. Or the tip of your pinky is what the baby is when the heartbeat starts.
Right. And at, a defibrillator or whatever they're called, where you shock someone out back into consciousness is like an electrical current, okay, so we know that's how our body operates. Our thoughts are a series of electrical, basically, impulses too. So I think that your inner workings, the physical side being, physically electrical, and everything that entails, works with the quantum level that we cannot see, and that also generates your reality around you. I think that pulls in the time. the perception of time. I actually don't think time exists.
Right.
But I think it's linked to our consciousness.
Yeah, it is more of a perspective type thing.
Yeah. Right? And I don't want to get too far into that, but I think time and consciousness are very linked. Time
and consciousness are one of our favorite things to talk about.
So anyway, I actually think that there is no separation. This is the problem we're having in science in the world right now, is we see this separation of the physical from the whatever, the woo-woo metaphysical. Like, you know, I'm not a subscriber to materialist views. I think they both, I'm not saying materialist, like this house exists, but I think our surroundings and our perception of them being electrical signals again, I think they intertwine. I think they're actually all comprising this matrix, so to speak. And that orientates with time and space around us. And therefore, when we focus, I think that's why meditation is so important, or focus, which meditation I think is focus, basically. When you focus on certain things, that becomes your reality. And there's a reason for that, because you are creating your reality. Now, here's where we move into the second segment of there being external forces. I don't have all the answers to this either, but a big lesson and roadblock for me has been something you don't desire. How do you bring it? How do things happen that you don't desire? Like, is that still within your creation, or is that just something you can't see? Is it still part of creation, or but on a level that you didn't make a conscious choice? Cancer being the big one,
right?
You know,
like either of us would have said, yeah, let me almost die from a rare and aggressive cancer.
Yeah.
When
Only
I was
2
perfectly
years,
healthy.
less than 2 years into our relationship, you know?
Yeah.
There's no way that I would have, or you would have made a conscious choice to decide that that was a good path. But you're here in this reality, and
probably dead in another.
Yeah. Well, that's the weird thing, different subject, but we're always dead in another reality because our lives are very short. So we're always dead and alive, which is really tricky.
Schrodinger's cat.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, you're here in this reality, and things have worked out for different reasons that seem to be pretty good right now, right? So that makes you think that if there is a higher consciousness, or whatever that center system that you were referring to with Tom Campbell's theory of everything, could that have made the decision?
A higher self?
Yeah, a higher self, or God, like, you know, whatever you want to call it. Is it possible that was... It's just weird to think that a God would make things happen that you don't agree with. But is it that strange, really? Because the human vessel and the human structure and ego can get in the way and think that it wants things that a higher source actually doesn't want. Does that make sense? It's hard to explain. Like, understand. Okay, you've used this before, the toddler that wants to eat the sucker that's been on the carpet, you know, for days. Like, he really wants that sucker. For some reason, he wants to put that sucker in his mouth, and any adult, or AKA higher perspective, is like, you really don't want that. Yes, I do. I really want that. No, you don't. So
it's like every relationship that we came across, it was like, I really want this one. And the universe is like, oh, no, you don't want that. One's dirty. Put that down. Right. Put it down.
So that could be argued that that's a God or a higher self, I think. You know, looking out for you, right? Like,
drop it.
No, drop
it.
No, there's better things coming. You don't want that sucker. Trust me. There's a whole Thanksgiving feast waiting for you, you know. Does that make sense?
It does. It does.
So therefore, like, maybe something or some entity from a higher perspective, sort of like a satellite works, would be able to see, like, this hang on, this is going to hurt, but it's going to get you to where you want to be anyway.
Well, especially if if the universe or God or source energy is made up of, it loves speed and efficiency is what, it's an efficient computer, right? Yeah. It's going to take the fastest route to something. But, I think where people get upset about the sucker and the carpet is people will say, well, how dare you equate me with some toddler that is ignorant of the world. I'm a grown-ass person and I can make my own decisions, and what I want something, I want it. And who is this higher being to tell me? I thought I was supposed to have free will. What's them to tell me what is good for me and what I want? Let me make that decision myself. And that's a separation between God and your personal self that really which I actually think causes a lot more pain than anything, is to have that separation from God and to think that you know better than God or the source energy, and not putting God as like a separate being. And I think that's the other thing, is that people don't realize that you are one. Like, it isn't just like a mom's body and a child's body, a mom's experience and a child's experience. No, they're connected through cords or it's more like it's more like your finger wanting to touch a stove and your brain's like, no, that's not good for the rest of the body. It's all one. That's more of what it's like for God than it is two separate beings, I think. That's why I think people get screwed up. We're like, God is this separate thing out there that's a parent looking over us that knows better than we do. It's like, yes, but it's not separate than us.
Right.
Our finger is its finger, and you wouldn't call this finger Sheri, but you wouldn't also say that it's not part of Sheri. You know?
Right.
Is that making sense?
Yeah. I think that's the thing I'm getting at, is the removal of the separation of everything, basically. We tend to do that in our brains, but I don't think that's a good way of perceiving things. I don't think there's a separation between consciousness and physical reality at all.
Yeah. And I mean, just back on that note, I mean, the other thing is that, like, God is way up above, meaning like just if on the top of the ladder. So he can see the entire maze and how the whole puzzle of reality fits together. And then even your higher self, the game player, is also above, so it can see better. Like, I think I need to go over here or do this. But it still takes into, your avatar isn't just a robot that gets pushed around. You do have free will. You still get to have a say in what happens. Like, I literally said in 19, I feel like I've done so much for so many people. I've always been somebody who like gives and gives and gives, and I just want people to have good lives. I want people to be happy. I want people to, be successful. And I was like, I don't think anyone feels that way about me. I was like, I think everybody is like, what can I get from Sheri? And I didn't feel like a victim, really. I just felt like, wait a minute, this seems a little out of balance. They were good observations. It was like, I feel like it's out of balance. Is there anybody who wants the same for me? I mean, besides you.
Yeah.
And then when I got cancer, then I experienced that. So I don't know if it was like a request that I made. Like, I would like to experience receiving, and I was never good at receiving because I was always the giver.
Yeah.
So during cancer, though, I was like, like, can we send you money? Can we send you food? And it was like, yes, because I can't do anything but receive because I have nothing to give right now.
Yeah. There's so many ways to going down that avenue that you got what you asked for earlier in the year.
You got what you asked for.
No, not in that way.
I know it sounded that way.
Yeah, but I mean,
know you don't mean
literally do. Like, I think that's the focus thing.
Yeah.
These things were heavy on your mind. You brought them up.
Be careful what you ask for.
It is that way. There's truth to that.
Because speed and efficiency. What would have been the fastest way to get that to me?
Right.
Well, make her almost die.
Right.
I mean, and there were so many other things that kind of all the requests that I had made all kind of accumulated into that being the best. Ugh, I hate saying that because I'm still like, I don't like that I didn't like that I had to go through that, but I'm happy to be here now. But I don't like the fact that that the doctors are still saying, well, you're going to die at any moment from this too. So there's no cure. You're still going to have. I hate that you're never out of the water. I'm never out of the water from it, which kind of annoys me. But I guess it gives me that benefit of being able to like live each day as if it's my last, you know?
True.
Which is live like you were dying kind of feeling.
It's strange though, because your personal story is linked to the outside story too. Because I feel like that looming threat that you experience is what the world is experiencing too, because we're still going on with all this, you know.
Explain.
We're still, a lot of people around the world are still feeling that looming threat, no matter what side you're on. Like, if
of what?
They're afraid of death, they're afraid of sickness, they're afraid of, you know, something that potentially has been painted bigger than it is. So there's a lot of fear out there, and a lot of lingering, like, even if it's not fear of a virus or anything like that, it's still fear in general is high right now because of our trauma that we've experienced the last few years. A lot of people are literally afraid to be happy and don't know how to relax anymore.
You think they feel like they're just waiting for the other shoe to drop, another variant to come, another lockdown to hit,
or anything. It doesn't matter.
Or one of their relatives to die from the vaccine or die from COVID or something.
It doesn't matter what quote unquote side you're on. A lot of people are just harboring fear, and
there's fear of being controlled too on the other side.
That's what I'm saying. It's all
our freedom stripped from us, which seems so real.
It's different subject matters, but there's just a lot of unknowns. And
it almost seems like there's two separate sides of the fear. You know, the fear that there's a virus that's going to kill you, or the fear that there are people who are going to strip away your freedoms.
Right.
And both are fear. It's hard for me because you know which side we're on. Right. You know, like we're on the side is like, okay, realistically, it literally looks like people are trying to strip away our freedoms.
Right.
Our economy is crashing around us.
Right.
But thank God for the truckers. Honk honk.
Yeah. Well, were there other comments on there?
We do go off on little tangents. Right. So that was the next one, was the interdimensional one, and then somebody said many are experiencing this, living the Mandela effect. Many who are experiencing the Mandela effect or living the Mandela effect think so. And we did a whole podcast on the Mandela effect. Yep, that is posted. So that one, if you haven't heard that, listeners, you can go listen to that one to understand that a little bit more, and we kind of break it down a little bit and different possibilities and what some of the collective consciousness of thoughts of what different things are that have happened, which is really interesting. If we were to jump timelines together or jump parallel, into a parallel universes together, that we would carry over a memory or a lingering memory collectively from the past world that is different in the new world. So that's interesting. And then and then Carrie says, I realize I made this jump when I voted Conservative in the Canadian federal election. Never in my wildest dreams did I think I ever would. And I think of so many people, a lot of us moderates,
in the US and the
independents,
world have experienced.
We're like, oh my gosh, I'm a conservative. And then at the same time, not feeling like bad about it. Like there's you see the good in all.
Oh, it's, yeah.
And then Penelope said, no, I think it's a Jumanji game and we're on level round 72.
Yeah, and I'm thinking the same damn thing. Like, this feels like everything about this new reality is not just a movie, but a game. It feels like it's some high level shit.
Yeah.
It does. It feels like you really have to be mindful of your thoughts. I feel like,
right,
on a personal level. I don't know if everyone collectively.
I wonder, because we are seeing this. Like thoughts becoming things so
immediately
fast, so fast.
The second I put it seems sometimes like the second I put doubts into things, they change, like they go away, or
ringing in my left ear.
And that could be argued that's like a sense of despair or desperation, which is a negative thing. That
doubt.
Yeah.
Oh.
Doubts and fears, I think, push away what you really want.
Mm-hmm.
And it attracts what you don't want.
Yes. Well, it's an inclusion-based universe, so or program.
And I've personally seen that so many times through the years where I solely focus on what I don't want, and then I was dumbfounded when I got more of what I didn't want. I just didn't understand that.
It's so silly. It's even down to the simplest thing of like carrying your coffee that's full to the brim, and you're like, I don't want to spill it. Don't want to spill it. Bam!
Yep.
Come all over the new carpet.
You're so busy focused on
the
that.
one thing I didn't want to have happen.
You stubbed your toe and then you spilled it anyway. Yeah. My whole life is full of that. So if we are in a advanced game now, like it's challenging, but it's challenging in a way like I really have to, me personally, I really have to be aware of what I'm thinking all the time.
Yeah.
Or feeling.
Right. That's why I think it's so important to create new habits of thought, because if you've been running on like the background stories of fear and guilt or shame and all these low level vibrations, it's so much easier to keep creating that in your reality because that's your default mode. So that's why you have to meditation is a good way to kind of redirect that, to stop the old thoughts, to create new thoughts. And that's what I've always said what I would do with my clients was that exact thing. I would say we were going to take things out of your subconscious that you don't even know are playing in the background. Like it's like a song, like a humming or something that's playing in the background of your mind. You don't even realize it's there. And we're going to pull it out. We're going to put words to it, which will create a new vibration for it. And then we're going to replant that into your brain as a new thought, a new vibration, a new subconscious vibration or belief system, which is the same thing, right? A belief system is just a thought you keep thinking. So when that's playing in the background of your mind, then your consciousness it's a little more easy. It's a little more capable of creating things that by default are good. But yeah, we can be sloppy thinkers. And if we get into a negative vibration, we watch a scary movie or we start fearing certain things or listening to really crazy things that happen. And there's so many crazy things to fall into right now that we can then trigger any of those old habits or old belief systems that come to the surface, and then all of a sudden they show up in our reality too. So yeah, it's like you can't be a sloppy thinker. Like it's like think good things or don't think at all, or not good things, because I don't think you have to always be positive. But I think this is help. Bear with me for a second, but I think that it's important to say that it's not about always being positive, but it's about being positive about being negative.
Yeah.
And I'm going to let that sink in for a second, because it's like when you feel sadness, but then you feel sadness about feeling sadness, or you feel guilt about feeling sadness, or you feel guilt about something you did that made you feel like it's like it piles on. So coming from a place of saying, okay, I'm in this deep place of despair right now and sadness, and I'm feeling it, and you allow yourself to feel that. And you don't judge yourself for it, and you don't feel guilt for it, you don't feel shame for it. You feel like this is part of my human experience, and I'm allowing myself to have a pity party. I'm allowing myself to cry it out and to feel the depth of this pain. And when you give that grace to yourself, it releases something. It allows it the ability to then soften and release and then go away. You know, if you ignore it, it just stays there, it piles up. If you try to push against it, or you try to like, I'm going to just put love on top of it and pretend like, like it's good. No, it's a good thing. It's a good thing. No, like you can't convince yourself. There's only so much you can do to convince yourself. You really have to allow it to come to the surface and release it, and giving yourself love and compassion when doing it, when dealing with the sadness or negative emotions, even anger. You know, when you get really angry or pissed off about things, just say, you know what, I'm just going to be pissed off about this, and allow yourself to be pissed off, and don't feel guilty about it. Like, oh, I shouldn't feel this way, because that just keeps it, that what you resist persists. So,
yeah.
Anyways, that was kind of a side note.
Yeah. Is there other comments, or was that?
Yeah. So the Jumanji thing was funny as hell. I think that's cute. And then somebody else says, nope, you're still stuck with us. I'm like, oh, well, maybe you jumped with her then. Obviously you jumped with her. You wouldn't be showing up on her post. Right. Marco says, me too, time to get out. And then Kathy said, I wish I could, jump into a parallel universe, basically. I like this positive spin on it. She says, I wish I could. One with goodness and love. And I'm like, yes, let's create that. Let's all collectively just focus on like a reality where there isn't this.
What we have now.
Yeah. Where it is, it's because when you talk about what you don't want, you get more of what you don't want. Right. So I think the way that Kathy worded that is really good, where there's goodness, there's love, there's contrast, but there's not this huge contrast between, like we were talking about the weather in Wisconsin. Yeah. It was always like super cold or super hot. Like you only have a little bit of time where it's like nice. And then we come to Florida and it's like, or the northern Florida, and it's still contrast. Yeah. There's cold days and there's warm days, but it's not as drastic. Yeah. You don't have snow one day and then be burning the next day. Right. So I feel like I want a world like that. That's like got just enough contrast. Right. It's the Goldilocks. Yeah. World is what I'd like to experience. So, and that's basically all of the comments, though. Yeah. Anything else about parallel worlds, timelines? Do you think the same thing? Parallel world and a timeline is the same thing? Oh, we are way over an hour. Oh. I didn't realize that. Oh,
but yes, you saved the best for last.
Should we save that for another?
I think we can go down that road again, like later on. Okay. But I do think that I think they're the same, basically. Yeah. But I don't think there's. For some reason, I have a problem with just a parallel world, and that's a simple context, for this meme that sparked this whole podcast. But I think there's millions, if not billions, because we're, like you said, we're constantly Googleplex is like we're always making decisions. Things are always changing. It seems really chaotic because I think that's where probability comes in, where there's things that you're always going to do. And that's potentially because I think everything's already happened already. Yeah. Another different subject. Yeah. All time exists at all times. That's like a center point.
Singularity.
Or God or whatever. Yeah. I don't know. But
it starts with a point.
Yeah. But I think there's lots of different timelines going, and that free will is the ability to shift them. Mm-hmm. And it does seem like it's getting quicker or easier to change realities.
Yeah, the amount of time between when you think and it happens.
The buffer period, right.
The buffer period is shorter. It used to be, Abraham Hicks used to say it was 17 seconds. You hold a vibration for 17 seconds. And then after a while, they said it's getting shorter and shorter.
That's so interesting. Yeah. It definitely seems that way.
Right. Yeah, we'll have to do a whole episode on synchronicities too. Because,
oh God, yeah.
Oh my gosh, we have so many. And if you hear this and you've had any synchronicities in your life that are just like crazy, where it's like, undeniable. There's no way that I could have been thinking about this and then it happened. Mm-hmm. Like that's nuts. Like post below. If there's any other topics you want us to talk about, like premonitional dreams or premonitions period, deja vu, that French disease, like any of that sort of stuff, like we would love to go over it. And we'll pick some comments from anybody's comments, and we could probably do a podcast about what you say. So be careful what you say. But yeah, and just on that note too, timelines, I think there's infinite possibilities, infinite timelines. I don't think that it ever ends. I think our brains don't have the possibility of being understanding what infinite means, because we come from a finite world and a reality where things have a beginning and an ending. And to think that your soul has always been and always will be is kind of crazy. To think that God has never had a beginning or an ending is hard to understand. And to think of world in a nonlinear fashion is hard to a construct to have in your brain. But I also think that I personally don't think that there's worlds that are full of matter. I think that there's possibilities of worlds, and I think everything is vibrational. I think everything has subatomic particles that are vibrating, which is energy, and energy includes thoughts, includes matter, includes everything, the neutrinos, God particles, all that's all part of our reality. And I think that we don't create a physical new world. We just tune into it. Yeah. We vibrationally align. It's like changing the channel.
Yes.
And we tune into what our strongest desires are.
Yep.
Not what. And so I think that's the other thing. I just want a quick last note was like, I think that going back to that sucker situation, with the little kid with the sucker, I think a lot of times we separate ourselves from God, and a lot of people can get mad at God and say, well, I don't want a God deciding what is best for me. And I don't think that people understand that God isn't separate from you, and God isn't saying, I know you want this, but I'm going to give you this instead. God is saying, I know you want this, and so I'm going to give you this. You're always getting what you want. Sometimes it comes in very strange ways and strange pathways, and I think that's when they say God works in mysterious ways. I truly believe that. But that's only because we can't conceptualize what it's like to see the entire picture. We've set our GPS system. We made our request of where we want to go, and then we trust and we follow God towards our destination.
Right.
And sometimes we go through a garbage dump in order to get there, but it's not always the scenic route.
Right.
But it's always the fastest, always the most efficient, and it's always done out of love. I truly think that the core root of our reality is something vibrationally close to love, gratitude, and appreciation. And I don't have anything to back that up except for it just feels right.
That's a good closing. Wow. That was very poetic and beautiful.
That was poetic. Till next time, stay high, everyone. Congratulations, you've made it all the way to the end of this long-ass podcast. And we want to thank you for joining us. And we want to hear from you. What answers do you have to these questions? What comments do you have? What insight do you have? Share with us. And what questions do you have for the answers? Find us on all podcast apps and on YouTube. Like, share, subscribe. And of course, you can find us on our website. Thanks so much for listening, and stay high, everyone.